Discover the world of STEAM with Mbwe Ishangi's engaging online course. From slave ships to steamships, STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, fields that drive innovation and creativity. Perfect for families aged 13 to 75. This course brings these disciplines to life through history, hands-on projects, interactive lessons, and real-world applications. You'll explore robotics, coding, art integration, and more, all from the comfort of your home. Sign up today and reignite the creative genius inside for every generation. Visit CryptoWokeMovement.com for details.
Let the dollar circulate. Let the dollar circulate. Let the dollar circulate. Let the dollar
Welcome to WTF, Ways to Freedom podcast show, where we explore all areas that bring freedom in state of mind, body, and spirit. Sit back, open your mind, and take a journey with your host, Mbwe Ishangi.
Bless up, bless up. Peace to all. Peace to one and all. Greetings. Hoping everyone is well on this Tuesday, June 11th. Really am sending good vibrations out to everyone tuning in, whether you are watching live or you are actually watching the replay. It's been a few days because we had some hiccups. We want to make sure that we get everything right before I actually come out again. This is episode 11. Blessed to be here with episode 11. We're doing we're continuing to grow as we're doing this. So just understand this, bear with us. This is a new space that I'm in regards to doing podcasts, doing recorded and also live talks about different topics. So with that said, just please understand that there may be some hiccups and we're going to get better as we keep going. This is how you get better, right? You jump into it and you make it happen. So this is what's been happening over the last week. We had some bad weather and had some bad internet connections. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to put out content that is going, that's looking shabby, right? So decided to take a few days off, get some things right. And now we're back at it again. And again, giving thanks for you tuning in. The chat is open. If you want to go ahead and plug in where you're hailing from, we always welcome that. The chat is always open as well for comments, responses, questions, thoughts, etc. Those things are available. So today, this evening, I want to really get into what I was trying to get into before. We're just talking about the topic tonight is what banks don't want you to know. If you know anything about me, I talk about a lot of different things because I believe in the totality of the African experience. So we're going to talk about it coming from the six themes that we usually cover every episode. One of these are going to be covered, if not a few of them. And it basically is finance, spirituality, health, history, STEAM, and philosophy. So, tonight is going to be a covering of a little bit of history because I love that, because we got to find the origin of things so we can stop repeating it, right? Repeating the history, the bad history part anyway. And then also there is a portion of finance. I want to talk about banking, not to be nerdish or not to be like, oh, you're talking about X's and O's and dollars and cents and whatnot, but because it is something that we, get up every morning to go and earn. Um, there's a lot of arbitrage or basic practices that have been set in place that we're unaware of, and we've been hustling backwards and not even knowing it. And there hasn't been any examples or enough, I would say, folks out there to speak about these things. And so that's an area where I felt I need to fill in. And, we talk about when you see a problem, instead of complaining, you step in and try to resolve or be a space of resolution for that problem that you're speaking of. So, for me, it's really essential to get into finances as often as possible because, again, it takes up such a large part of our lives. So much so that, again, we spend the least time knowing about it, which is oxymoronic, right? It's been a program that's been putting us to not even think about finances the way we should be, the way those elite are, the ones that own their time, they can do whatever they want, and kind of being responsible for creating the type of world that we're living in right now, which we know is chaotic, right? Or it's definitely not in favor of us, right? So that's one of the reasons why I do want to touch on this. I'm going to always be doing more research and sharing what I find and certain money methodologies that can be applied, but also we want to talk about the culprits. We want to talk about those people behind it, the systemic design of it, because once you understand that, it's one thing to say get your finances in order. But if you don't know your why, if your reason why is just based on finances, and probably not the fact that the history of finances has had a historic relationship of treating people of melanated hue in a bad light, then you might slip up again and end up being in these kind of debt circles that we've been in, and they've been inherited throughout the generations. Or let's just say if it's not debt, we don't have the wealth. So tonight, this is the reason why I want to talk about this topic of what banks don't want you to know. If this is your first time here, checking out WTF, not what the fuck, but Ways to Freedom podcast, we are talking about things that cover, in essence, the 9 areas of people activity, really 10 areas of people activity that was put out by Doctors Neely Fuller and Francis Cress Welsing and Brother Kidi Awadu. These 10 areas are basically, if you want to understand how global white dependency works, and if you want to understand about global white dependency, I would just say go back to the archives and watch some of the first episodes. I really went into what I meant by that instead of, saying it again and again over episode. That's the plug for get you to go to watch the other ones, right? Go see the other ones because they're just as vital. But the 10 areas are, when you think about how things are designed in the world, someone came up with that design, someone or someones. And so they had what you would call a playbook or a blueprint. And so they follow this, and this is inherited throughout their bloodlines, and they all follow the same. And they will add and tweak some things, but in essence, it's for them to stay on top and for the rest of us to stay on the bottom end as bottom feeders. So those 10 areas, if you think about it, they consist of, again, 10 is economics, education, entertainment, health, religion, sex, war, labor, law, politics. Now, I know I mixed it up. I usually say it a different way. Alphabetically, I'll say it again. Economics, education, entertainment, health, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And when you think about those 10 areas, we can see that at the helm of those areas, they're usually people, as you watch my last episodes, if you haven't, I go into those families like your Rockefellers, like your Rothschilds, like your Oppenheimers, like your JP Morgans, these corporations that we know of names of. A lot of these names are named after actual people. And when you look up these people and what they've done to become these superlatives that people, speak of so much wrongly in a high regard, you'll find that they did some things that, in regards to treating Black people, I would say, uh, and the rest of the world, but primarily us, because that's who I'm focused on, is they didn't treat us too well, and they continue that. So if we want to get out of this cyclical pattern of poverty, of depravity, of misinformation, of just, again, as Malcolm would say, the bamboozlement of it all, uh, we need to find out who did it and what was their motive, what was their reasoning, and also who were their allies, what was the cult, who were these folks. So that's what we do here at Ways to Freedom podcast show, is we talk about ways to break away from that allegiance or that dependency that they put on us unknowingly, and then create the path that where we can break away and do our own damn thing, y'all. Right? I think that's very possible even in this lifetime. So again, with that said, if this is your first time, that's what we do here. Uh, I also ask, and I know I need to earn that, but just I'm gonna put a reminder out there. And if you've been here before, I appreciate that as well. So go ahead and like this video. I promise you I will earn it. It's just to get that out of the way so you won't have to, think about it later on. But it helps us grow the channel. My goal is to try to reach as many of our folks that are interested in learning alternative ways to freedom as possible. And your support enables that to happen. Be it also liking, subscribing, hitting that notification bell so that you will be informed when new episodes come out, and also sharing it with your network, sharing it with your families, your friends, your cousins, etc. Because again, this conversations, I think the reason why I created this podcast was because I didn't see it happening enough. I didn't see these topics being spoken about in a broad spectrum enough. They might have been pockets here and there, but for me, again, you see a void, you go in there and fill it. You don't complain. You go in there and you fill it. So that's what this is all about. All right. So let's go ahead and get into tonight's show. And just if you check it now, because you always know I put here, I'm pointing the wrong way. Let me get my dimensions right. This is some of my ads. This is I put out ads for every episode. if you log in and watch every episode, you'll see that this changes. I keep doing it the wrong way again. Let me get my things together. But this is pertaining to tonight's conversation. The book I wrote called Ep11, Intergenerational Wealth Planning for Black People. You might have also saw the commercial that played at the beginning of the episode. I go into detail about the monetary gain, the families behind it, all of the shenanigans behind the games, and how we can actually then flip it and use some of those same money methodologies that have created wealth for their bloodlines to then put it into our bloodline. So if you haven't read my book, it's my sixth book called Ep11. There's the barcode right there. You can go ahead. I keep doing it again. I'm going to get it right. There's the barcode right there. You can take a screenshot of that, or you can go to cryptowokemovement.com and you can find the book there. It's also available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook. So for those on the go that don't have time to sit there and flip pages and take notes, just go ahead and get the audiobook and you can hear it and be through the book even quicker and be able to refer to it. All right. So now that all the house orders is out the way, just promoting, I'm going to, as they say, closed mouth don't get fed. So this is everything you see here, this set that I designed, I designed it. I'm a graphic designer, web developer, all that kind of stuff. So, I'm going to go ahead and, kind of beat my chest a little bit about this because I really do love enjoying and creating visuals for you. That's just been one of my passions. So I do put some interest and great effort in trying to create something that is pertinent to what we're talking about, but also visually appealing to the eye, I hope. If you like it, hey, put a chat that, hey, bro, I like that. I mean, I appreciate what you're doing for the visuals. With that said, we also will have, I also have a PowerPoint. So, I'm going to go through some visuals to help sink in the information I'm talking about, because it's one thing to sit here and listen to me run my mouth. It's another thing to have a visual to kind of be able to recall later on when you might have that idea or something that you were recalling about, or something comes up to your mind. You can remember there's a visual to some of those top things that he spoke about. And that'll help you also sink that stuff in and let it stay into your mental. So let's go ahead and let me pull up tonight's. point here. Let me just make sure I get everything right. Here we go. At the stage. All right. So tonight we're talking about what banks don't want you to know. Again, this is one of I always say this is one of my favorite podcasts, but all of them are. But, again, money is something very dear to me. You know my story. I'm not going to get into it tonight. I've talked about it before. But, I really do believe that if we understood money, that we would be in much better situations, not just in the pocket, but also in the mind, body, spirit. Um, I talked about why there's an episode of why I feel we all need financial therapy, and I speak about the stress levels that money incurs if you were able to handle your finances in a better way. The stress levels would pretty much go away to a degree because most of our arguments in our families come around money. So if we were to be able to get a harness over how we can better our behaviors, be able to fashion our behaviors better around it, we would have better health lifestyles, right? So tonight we're gonna get into really what's going on with when we're talking about the whole financial game. So I'm gonna play uh, Nana John Henry Clark's clip here because this is going to set the preface, the opening message. All right, here we go.
Who programmed us into oblivion to program us out of it. Education has but one honorable purpose, one alone. Everything else is nonsense. And that is to train the student to be a respectful and a responsible handler of power. People do not train you in how to take their power away from them when they hold power by controlling you. To expect this of other people is a contradiction in terms. Freedom is something you do not wish upon, you do not dream upon. Freedom is something you take with your own hands. And when people dictate the content of education, they're dictating what goes into your mind. And when they dictate that, they're going to dictate your action. And though you might lie about it, so long as you are in this position, you are some form of a slave. Free yourselves from it and do not expect others to do it for you. We stop begging at the door of people who reduced us to beggars.
So when you hear this, every time I hear it, it gives me a whole nother perspective about what he's speaking about. It's so layered. It's many layers to this, and um, we do live in a country that is founded on and still exists upon. Actually, it is the sustenance of this country is racism. Um, Especially if you travel abroad and you see how people treat their own citizens and also how they treat us in most cases. Uh, this country has had a history of treating us in bad favor. We can sit here and look at today, 2024, and think, oh, I can party where I want, I can buy what I want, I can do all these different things. But in essence, there's still this racist type of system that is in place that makes us more, kind of gives us a I would say we're disillusioned and we're not even aware of this thing that's happening. We don't even know that we're being disrespected. We don't even know that we're being underrepresented. We don't know these things because we're in an individual mindset. We're thinking, oh, I'm good, or I'm trying to get where I'm trying to get. I'm focused on me, opposed to looking at it like it's kind of you, as they say, separating the forest from the trees. It's like if you can't, or the tree from the forest, if you can't see the whole picture, then yeah, you're blindsided. You're thinking everything is an individual and probably authentic experience. But when you look at the history of this country, you see how things have been going since its inception, before it was even the United States in 1776. When you think about the history, I talked about it a few weeks ago about the history of the two Americas, a couple episodes ago, and how we talked about how the quote unquote founders of this country wanted freedom and they wanted to be broken away from England. And when they come over here, they do the very same thing to their own people. So it's again something that we don't focus on enough because we don't know history. We don't study history. We're not interested in history. That's the biggest part. So because of those three factors of not knowing, wanting, and having an interest in it, it's allowed to repeat itself. And so therefore, generations after generations start inheriting these things that we don't even know they're inherent. We're thinking again, this is just my generation or a recent thing, but it's been happening for hundreds of years. So if we were just to do some of that diligence and historical background of how things have been put together, then we can see, oh, this is a design that's been put in place. So what can I do to try to put a monkey wrench in that? Right? It starts with the history. It starts with learning the people that were behind this. Then you move on up to the current people, the heirs, the bloodline, right? And then you can start to implement your alternatives. But if we just sit here and complain, or we think that my solution is putting a vote in the ballot box, all we're doing is making it harder for future generations, and definitely even in our lifetime. Okay, so just the note I want to make, okay, about that. So when I bring up Dr. Clark and his quote or this clip that he talked about, I understand that America is racist, has been racist, will remain racist, and it will use its institutions in that same light. That includes banking, y'all. All right, banking is racist. All right, and I'm gonna talk about some things tonight that'll prove it. And it isn't just against Black people. I mean, it's against their own kind too. It's the elitism versus everyone else. But they definitely do spend a lot of time making sure that we don't know certain things and that we fall into certain mindsets. But they also do their own wrong too, right? But I'm putting that out there so that we understand America has no intention of ever being what they claim to be, a place of the land of the free and home of the brave. Not for everyone, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, right? It comes down to the illusion of thinking, well, if I get these things that I'm supposed to have, then I'm going to be in a space where I could have this, as they said, the right to pursuit of happiness, right? To have the things that you want in life and not be bothered. The fact is that no matter how much education you have, these institutions will not teach you how to manage money. Because if they did, they'd be rendered powerless, jeopardizing their bottom line, making money off your ignorance. It is clear to me that they understand you will never, ever, and if you can look back in your educational history and you can understand, you can think about this, y'all. Have you really ever had a great education or introduction to how money works? Outside of maybe balancing a budget, of course, we're introduced to what a penny and a nickel all up to the $100 bill was. But have we ever really had something that taught us even learning how to buy a house or learning how to buy a car or learning how the differences of paying interest versus earning interest? We've never had those spaces throughout their educational system, whether public or going into collegiate ranks. I was an econ major my first year and a half in college, and I didn't learn anything about what I know now. And I could tell we weren't even going in that direction. It was all about supply and demand, consumerism. That's what you'll hear the most about banking, is about consumerism, buying something and paying it back slowly and getting hit in the head over interest, right? So their advice is, if you see this here, it says their advice is, we've all been told this, and a lot of us have followed suit. And this is why a lot of us are going through, if they haven't already, going through your midlife crisis, is go to school, second, get a job, then you're going to get married, then you're going to get in debt because you're going to buy a house and you're going to have kids and all that kind of stuff. You're going to work to pay off that debt your entire adult lives. You'll have kids in there in the middle. Then you're going to retire around 63, 65, if you make it there, because Black men in America, usually their average is 62, I believe now, 63, but barely making retirement. And then you don't even get to live past it. And then you transition. And that's supposed to be a good life, y'all. That's supposed to be the definition of what a good life is. 63 years. Of the 63 years, You worked roughly 18 to 63. So we're talking about nearly 50 years, already 45 years of your life has been working, labor, trying to pay something off that you shouldn't have bought in the first place, or it shouldn't have cost so much to pay off in the first place. Let's just say that, because we all need a home. We all need a car, right? But that's the way they say this is your life is supposed to be. And if you do live to be past 63, do you have enough to hold you off? Because there's a thing called corporate ageism where you're just too old to get hired, so you can't earn money. So how do you sustain yourself at that point from 63 to, let's say you live to 85? How are you going to sustain yourself for the next 22 years? Off of Social Security? If you don't know, ask someone in your family that is of those ages and ask them how much do they really have saved versus what they put in. And you'll have some very interesting conversations. So this really comes down to, yes, when you point the finger and say, hey, it's they set this up, they did this, is them, right about that. But also those three fingers are that one finger pointing away has three fingers pointing back at you. And this is a conditioning that we've been brought through. We've been conditioned to act and behave the way we have. It's not natural that we do these things, but because we've seen it done, we follow others doing it. That's the sheeple mentality I've spoken about. I speak about this all the time. And it starts as simply as, what do you do with your time, your off time, right? I'm not saying to go work. I'm not saying to go earn paycheck. Do what you got to do. But it's what you do after that we need to think about. So if you take an average, a person that works, an 8-hour shift, they work, say 9 to 5, or even if it's a graveyard shift or whatever it is. Once they get off work, they roughly have about 6 hours that they're going to waste doing nothing or doing something that isn't as productive. That consists of, just being on the internet, getting on TikTok, streaming Netflix, doing something like that, watching TV, and just chilling, right? Because, and not to say they're not allowed to do that, because you just worked an 8-hour shift. You got your coins for the day, right? And you need to just relax and detox. And guess what? You got to get up and do it the next day, right? But when you think about the mathematics behind it, think about this, is that 6 hours that you wasted on Monday, when you do it another 5 days, that's 30 hours for the week, right? Let's just say that you were doing that for a month. And then if it was 7 days a week, right, that would be 42 hours a week, right? So let's just say that you did that for a month. That's going to be about 168 hours for the month that you've wasted, right? If you do that for a year, we're talking about over 2,000 hours. Now, when we talk about how many hours does it take to be a master of something, well, the answer is 10,000 hours. Well, if you do the math, within 5 years, you will be a master of wasting time, right? And a lot of us have been wasting time using this same numerical formula for over 10 years, 20 years, some of us even 30 years, right? I'm guilty. I used to waste a lot of time, not knowing it, not thinking I'm just chilling. I did what I do for the day. I just want to relax. But you never get yourself out of the situation you're in, is if you're content with the situation you're in. If you're trying to get out of the situation you're in, you could use some of those 6 hours to do something else. So that's why we find that rich folk have a thing called the 5-hour rule. The 5-hour rule is, if you're not spending 5 hours per week learning, you're being irresponsible. The wealthy will say, if you're not spending 5 hours per week learning about finances, then you are being irresponsible, not only for yourself, but for your bloodline, right? So what does that come out to? 5 hours a week. If you do it 7 days a week, that'd be about 42.8 minutes a day. So out of those 6 hours, we're not trying to take away 6 hours. I'm not trying to say be busy for those 6 hours. I'm saying take away 42.8 minutes of that 6 hours and do something to be a master of something, changing the trajectory of where you want to go with your life. And be it a career, you want to be a master chef, or you want to be, any type of, you want to be a master a DJ or whatever. You want to be really good at that. You put in 10,000 hours, right? 5 hours, we can get you on your way there. I would say it doesn't even have to be a career. I would, at the bare minimum, make it be about finances, learning about money. If you spent 42.8 minutes a day learning about money, rest assured, in the next year, you'll be in a better place. And just a humble plug, if you spend 42.8 minutes a day reading my book, Apocalypse and Intergenerational Wealth Planning for Black people, you absolutely will be in a different place in 6 months, if not sooner. Okay. So we have to think about spending our time more wisely, or you're going to see yourself doing the same thing and it'll be another 5 or 10 years and you wonder where the time went. All right. So I have this experiment that I want you to do in watching this. Go ahead and take a moment and grab a pad and a pen. Uh, and I want you to draw this diagram. Yep, we're going to do a little exercise here. The reason why I want to do this exercise, I want to make it a little interactive. I'm giving you time, that's why I'm talking. Go ahead and grab that pad and pen. And what I'd like for you to do once you get it is I just want to do this experiment because I want to give you something to try to exercise our minds. We don't get to exercise our minds a lot. If you've seen this before, don't say nothing. All right. But if this is your first time seeing this, I want you to participate in this. So what you would do once you have your pad and pen, which I hope you got right now. If not, just go ahead and pause this and come back. But you would take your paper and you would draw 3 dots, 3 rows of 3 dots like this in a square form. All right, 3 rows of 3 dots. Now the assignment here is you are to take this diagram and the goal is for you to draw, you want to connect all 9 dots. You want to connect all 9 dots, but you're only going to be using 4 lines, no curves, 4 straight lines. And these 4 straight lines are going to run concurrently. So what that means is when you do your first line, where the first line ends, the second one begins. Where the second line ends, the third one begins. So you can't do a line over here, take your pen off the pad, and then jump over here and do another line over there. The pen must stay on the pad the entire time, drawing 4 concurrent straight lines, and the lines can only cross each other one time. Okay, so let me say it again. You're going to take your pen, put it on the paper. You're not going to lift your pen off that paper until you've done your end of your 4th line. And you're going to do 4 straight lines trying to connect all 9 of these dots. All right. And a line can only intersect or cross each other one time. All right. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds for the sake of time. You know, I know that I don't have any mood music to play, but we'll go ahead and give you 30 seconds to give this a try. All right. I'm going to be quiet for a second. I will play some music, but YouTube will probably get me. All right, we're going to give you another 15 seconds. I know some of you like, man, give me a chance. I just want to try it myself. If that's the case and you're not watching live, go ahead and pause it. Pause the video and come back when you're ready. All right, we're going to stop in about 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so we're done. So, how you do? If you were able to connect them, dope. You know what I mean? Again, only 4 lines. You didn't lift it off the paper, and you had a line intersect each other one time. You connected it. Great. Especially if you've never seen this before. Really dope. Salute. However, if you didn't, I'm going to go ahead and show you the answer. All right. So here we go. See that? Boom. Oh, just gave you a tease. Let's show you again. Boop, boop. Let me blow it up so you can see it better. All right. All right. So when I told you to draw this 9 or 3 by 3 by 3 dot square, the programming kicked in. We've been westernized. So most of you, if not all of you, when you saw this, you put an illusion of a box around there. And so what that made you think is I can only do my work of connecting these 4 lines to all 9 dots within the space of inside those 9 dots. A lot of us did that. This is seen here. When you see the red dotted line, that little red dotted square, a lot of us put that there because we've been conditioned unknowingly that that's how we think. We thought, okay, we got this area to work in. So everything inside that dotted box is where we got to make the magic happen. Right? It's not your fault. This is programming, westernized programming. Doesn't matter what color you are. Most people are going to think the same way starting out. So the answer is actually right before your eyes. So how we started. If you look in the first gray line that starts in the upper left corner, you'll see that it starts outside the box, that illusionary box that we created. The first line is going to go and touch point the first dot. It's going to go down and it's going to hit the fifth dot in the middle. It's going to continue going diagonally down to hit the ninth dot. That's line 1. Line 2, we didn't take the pin off the pad. We went left and we hit the 8th and the 7th dot and came back outside that illusionary box. That's line 2. Line 3, we went diagonal again and we hit dot 4. Next, we see the point of intersection, the overlapping lines, that X I told you, that's where they crossed. Continue going up, you see the second dot being hit. Then you go back outside the box. And then on the 4th line, again, not taking the pin off the pad, you go straight down and hit the 3rd, 6th, and 9th dot. So technically, you got here a diagonal down, a move left, a diagonal up, and then a straight down. Boom, 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 boom. All right? There you go. Now, why am I showing you this? Because, again, this isn't a magic show. You didn't tune in for that, right? It, again, is a psychological exercise of how we've been programmed to think, especially people of color, because we have this thing about this inherited struggle, how beautiful it is to have this inherited struggle. Some of us even call it the beautiful struggle. We are synonymous with making hard, giving little and making something out of nothing, right? Something out of nothing. Think about that. Something out of nothing. We historically, what's one of the most popular phrases said about Black people? Oh, they gave us lemons. And what did we do? We made lemonade, right? Well, as proud as we say that, I don't think we should be as proud, because we make mistakes when you just leave it at that. If you just say, hey, I made lemonade out of the lemons that you gave me, then what if I want lemonade again? I got to wait for you to give me another lemon? Or cheat code or crack code, decipher code, whatever you want to call it, break the bloodline mentality is, in that lemon it had seeds. So take the seeds out and fertilize them to grow your own lemon tree. And if then once those lemons are grown, guess what? You ain't got to ask nobody for no lemons no more. You can grow all the lemons you want and have all the lemonade you need. Right? So that's the mentality, is that we've been taught to be proud to take something small and make it into something. No, we deserve the whole Monty. We got to stop being proud of being fed little, because they'll continue giving it to us. So while the rest of the world understands this mindset in regards to, at least generationally, as far as race is concerned, while we're inside this red box trying to figure something out, make it work, making 4 lines connect 9 dots when it's virtually impossible, the rest of the world is outside that box, living the way they want to. And guess what? The biggest part is they're asking for permission later. They're not asking someone, can I come out here and do this? Is it okay? Will I get in trouble? I'm going to do it anyway. And if you call me on it, cool, my bad, I didn't know. But us, we sit there and we will wait. First of all, we won't even think that we can do that, because again, it's a systemic design where we've been designed to want to ask for permission. Can I have your consent before I go and live my life? And that's been inherited down our bloodlines. So because of that, it's stunted our growth, because the person you ask, can you do it? Most likely they say, no, you can't. And we're like, oh, okay. And then I'll go back to trying to figure it out within these parameters of this illusionary border that I made. Man, we need to start living life differently. If we want to live life differently, we need to change our old methodologies, our own ways of going about things, the ways that our grandparents taught us, and start thinking outside the box. So that's what this is all about, y'all. It's thinking differently. And it ain't hard to do, and you don't need nobody's permission, because they ain't asking nobody, so why do I? right? That's what it's all about, all right? Hope you got that. So we're using that concept for our theories and thoughts about banking, about money, and how it works. So it is the standard nowadays that no bank fails for lack of capital. Unprofitable lending is always the underlying cause. James Grant said that. He is a banker, and he speaks about how, banks fail because they don't lend enough money or they don't charge enough in those loans. Robert Wilmers, who is the chairman and CEO of M&T Bank, said in the simplest sense, the key to the performance of any traditional commercial bank is the profitability of the loans it makes. They don't care about us. They don't care about the consumer. They want you to owe them, and they want you to pay them slowly as possible. That's why a car loan is 60. They'll start out with 60 to 72 months, because each time you send me a payment, there's an interest rate to that. And I'd rather you pay me 60 or 72 times opposed to 36. That's why mortgages have 30-year mortgage notes. For 30 years, you promised me to pay a bill on this house. And although your job isn't promised you for 30 years, you're promising me you're going to pay me every month. And the moment you miss a month, 90 days after that, I can take it all back. That is the traditional agreement that most people make when they have a 30-year or even a 50-year mortgage. You're promising to pay somebody plus interest for 30 years, but you don't even know if your source is guaranteed, right? So with that said, also, we got to get to the history of banking is that, it has a racial makeup. It has a racial origin. And when you talk about the racial origin, then it gives you an idea of how these things have been designed and why they've been so effective. All right, so let me play this clip for y'all. Check it out.
Banks send you checkbooks you never use. Banks even text you when your account is overdrawn. Banks are so important that when they get into a mess, the government bails them out, unlike the rest of us. But did you know that the banks that exist today, maybe even the bank that you use, were built off the back of slavery?
Empires of Dirt, a show about Europeans getting rich at the expense of everyone else.
From 1619, 11 million African men, women, and children were stolen from their homes and put to work on the sugar, tobacco, and cotton plantations of America and the Caribbean. Their forced labor helped build Britain into a global superpower. And even after slave owning was abolished in Britain, the British taxpayer still paid £20 million. That's 40% of the national budget, or 16.5 billion in today's money, as compensation for slavery. No, not to the slaves. The money went to the owners. Not a single penny was given to those who had been enslaved. The amount borrowed was so huge that the debt wasn't paid off until 2015, which means that if you paid tax at any point before that, your money went towards compensating slave owners.
You hear that? Compensate slave owners.
All four of the UK's largest high street banks have been linked to the slave trade by way of these compensation payments for their loss of human property. Barclays Bank was founded out of a merger with a colonial bank that helped fund the British Empire, and several senior Barclays bankers were involved in the slave trade. Through HSBC's merger with Midland Bank, one of its first managers, George Pollard, received £230,000 of today's money from British taxpayers as compensation. In exchange, he gave up 134 enslaved people on the Caribbean island of Nevis in the 1830s. The president of Lloyds Bank, John White Cater, also received compensation for estates in Jamaica in 1835. And 27 former members of the Bank of England were linked to slavery in the 18th and 19th centuries, including 11 former governors. Even after Britain abolished the slave trade in 1807, we continued to profit off it. Bankers just pivoted to indirect means of making money from the exploitation and trafficking of human beings. The City of London provided the finance for slave traders all around the world, and loans were one way of making money. So a British bank would loan money to a US plantation owner to buy more slaves or agricultural equipment. If you think mortgages are secured against the land you own, think again. So-called plantation mortgages, where US slave owners would borrow money from British banks, were secured against the value of the slaves they owned, not their land. The Royal Bank of Scotland offered plantation mortgages. So did Barclays. These mortgages were then bundled into bonds and sold to investors all over the world. When the US slave owners made repayments, the people who owned those bonds made a small profit. The City of London has defined British wealth for hundreds of years. Money comes in and money goes out to countries all over the world, and our status as a global power rests on our financial institutions. But the labor that built many of these institutions was enslaved. Iconic buildings like the Guildhall in the heart of the City of London epitomise Britain's involvement with the slave trade. Between 1660 and 1690, 15 Lord Mayors of London were shareholders in the Royal Africa Company, which shipped more African slaves to the Americas than any other institution in the history of slavery. A statue of William Beckford Sr., twice Lord Mayor of London, still stands in the Guildhall to this day. Beckford grew rich off the toil of slaves he owned on 20,000 acres of land in Jamaica. The Royal Exchange was the heart of the City of London, where stocks were bought and traded from all over the world. It was funded by Sir William Garrard, who helped to develop the Moroccan slave trade in the 1500s. So the blood and toil of African slaves literally helped build the bricks of the City of London. Following the Black Lives Matter protests, the insurance company Lloyd's of London agreed to pay reparations to Black community groups for its involvement in the slave trade. Campaigners are calling on the banks to follow suit. So when you go to withdraw cash from an ATM, remember that it was your bank that was complicit all those years ago. Slavery built the financial institutions we use today.
So this is the interesting part when you get to hear what they are trying to, they're trying to apologize for their involvement, right? Lloyd says, we stand against racism, slavery, and discrimination in all its forms and truly believe that by reflecting, understanding, promoting, and valuing the diversity of our colleagues, we will deliver better results. How about cut the damn check, right? Forget all this apologies, right? Here's another one. Barclays Bank. We can't change what's gone before us, only how we go forward. Meaning, we made all our money, but we wasn't the ones that did it. It was our forefathers. I wasn't there, so you can't blame me. Although everything you have, all your riches is based upon what your foreparents did, right? We think about this, like how quickly our universities were taking Bill Cosby and Diddy's name off of buildings and even returning the money that they've donated to some degree. Well, not a lot of them did return the money, but the bottom line, they're taking their name off of stuff, but they're not returning the money, right? We are committed to, as a bank, to do more to further foster our culture of inclusiveness, equality, and diversity. Well, yeah, you can foster it because you got the money to do so. You wouldn't be able to do it unless you didn't do it. You didn't accept or still use the proceeds of what your foreparents have done. All right. That's Barclays. RBS Bank says we have recently set up a task force. Ooh, whoop-de-damn-do, led by our BAME, not sure what BAME is, colleagues, banking something probably, which will look at what more we can do as a bank. Cut the damn check. That's what you can do. This includes looking at making contributions to BAME groups. And again, I don't know what BAME means, but I definitely don't mean making contributions to us, right? Definitely believe that. And if it was, we ain't got the check yet. Bank of England. The Bank of England was never itself directly involved. Lies. England was all involved in the slave trade. But is aware of some of the inexcusable connections involving former governors and directors and apologies for them. So again, like they're not even here anymore. And they're just going to apologize, but they're not going to cut the check. They're going to keep making the money, using the money that they seeded based upon that. The bank is committed to improving diversity and is actively engaging with staff, particularly with our BAME colleagues, to help us identify steps that can be taken now to be as inclusive as possible. You don't need help to wrong an atrocity, to right an atrocity. It's all about finances, and they don't want to cut the check, bottom line. But they want to make it seem like they're trying, and nothing ever comes about it, right? Nothing ever comes of it. We haven't had any checks cut. We haven't had any reparations. The discussion always get muted. So all that stuff that they talk about they're going to do, it's just all talk. It never really comes into fruition. And nor should we expect it to. I'm just saying, don't sit there and wait for it. I personally believe that they will never give us reparations because if they did, well, I think it would be a great idea. I'm not against it. I think if they did do it, it would get them, it would get us off their backs. They couldn't say, hey, y'all keep asking me for this money. I gave it to you. The reason why I say that is if they gave us reparations, I think that within a quarter of a year, if not half a year, they get the money right back. Because what would most of us do? We go buy rims, we buy jewelry, we buy bags, we buy all these material things. We buy, houses that, homes with 5 or 6 bedrooms and bathrooms, and only it's only a single person or two people living there. We would splurge, and because again, we're not financially astute to how to deal with wealth. So we will all be like those athletes that go and blow within the first 2 years of their contract, and then they're not playing anymore. So they get that money right back, and also because the world is designed where everything, as far as people of African descent in the United States are, we are 99% consumer, 1% producer. We aren't creating or building anything. So everything that we primarily buy is owned by someone outside of our race. So y'all get the money back. But I think that they would never do it because there's just a few of us that could do something monumental. And all it takes is one or two to change the course. So that's why I feel like we'll never get that check. Although I think if they really want to get us off their back, go ahead and do it. All right. So getting back to this, so when we look at the banks and their involvements, there was one case where Chase Manhattan Bank allegedly gave us reparations, uh, if you want to call it that. In 18, actually, there was a $5 million endowment that was created for residents of Louisiana, the state of Louisiana, if you're of African descent, because allegedly Chase Manhattan Bank had acquired 2 banks that were involved in the selling and accepting and of selling of 13,000 Africans being held against their will. And so they said, well, look, this is our reparations. We're going to go ahead and create a $5 million. We have $5 million. We're going to give $1 million away every year for 5 years for anyone that wants to go to college. That's their reparations, right? And that's a slap in the face. $5 million when you're worth over 2.6 trillion. Come on, y'all. But again, most people thought that was a great deed. New York Life is also a company that was involved. They do, life insurance, and they're some of their first clients. If you know anything about indentured servitude, as far as our ancestors were concerned, the slave masters would work us to death, literally, and then get paid when we died. The family would get nothing. So we were insured as labor workers, knowing that we were going to have expedited the transition of our lives. And not only was he there to kick off when we were working off the free labor, but then he got a nice healthy check when we transitioned. All right. So New York Life was part of that game. And they're not the only ones, but a lot of them were. We look at it here at Nathan Rothschild and his bank, the Bank of Rothschilds. Personal gains were from, using our ancestors as collateral in dealings. Brown Brothers Harriman, the oldest and largest private investment bank and securities firm in the United States, founded in 1818, enslaved hundreds, financed cotton economy by lending millions to Southern planters and cotton brokers. So it was these international bankers that were actually keeping, and they fund more than just slavery. They fund wars today, where they play both sides of the fence, where they'll cause the war and they'll come in there and be the so-called rescue and rebuilding those cities that they actually took over. Right. But I really want to focus on, again, it's about naming the names. I wouldn't be doing any justice, as Ancestor Steve Coakley would do. He said, name the names. And so I wouldn't be doing any service and justice if I wasn't going to talk about some of these folks. And I want to focus on 2 families that I've done several times, but I also just want to show other parts that they had their antenna or their antlers involved in, because they weren't just involved in one thing. Remember, we talked about the 10 areas of people activity. They had their hands involved in all those areas. So when we look at the Rothschilds family, and we can see that the head of it was Mayor Amschel Rothschild. He believed in keeping business in his family to ensure the success of their future. He believed his bloodline to the point where, excuse me, that he his daughters, if they were to get married, first of all, they had arranged marriages. Some of the marriages were with his own children or nieces and nephews. So incest was happening. And the daughters had no choice. Well, their choice was either you marry your cousin or your brother, have offspring because they want to keep the blood pure, or you kicked out in the street. We'll take all your wealth will be stripped and you'll be on the street as a zealot. So, they made their choice. They said, I'd rather, sleep with my brother than to be out on the street with nothing. But this is what Rothschild was saying. This is what he put on his own daughters. He made his daughters marry into the family. And, we know what incest does. It creates craziness. And so that's why we see these things happening and why the world is so crazy today. Right. But in even that craziness, he had a methodical plan um, to control the world. He had 5 sons. And this is why I understand international bankers, they have no loyalty to a country. They are global citizens. And it's best best definition, they are global citizens, meaning they live wherever they want. They have passports or whatever to get in, and so they don't have to just say I'm American. They are also European, they're British, they're Chinese, they're all. So he set up that way. So much so that he made it so that his sons were the head of all the banking of major nations. Right? His son Nathan Meyer was the head of the banks in Frankfurt, Germany. His other son James Meyer was in Paris, France. Another son Solomon Meyer was in Vienna, Austria. A fourth one was Carl Mayer, and he was the head of the banks in Naples, Italy. He was also the deputy chair of De Beers Mining Company. If you know about De Beers Mining Company, you might have seen the commercials where they have the diamonds and a silhouette of a man or a woman. You never see the person that's a black silhouette, but they play these violins. Dun, 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 dun. That's a De Beers Mining Company. These mining companies are out in Africa where they are actually, even to this day, imprisoning or enslaving Africans to comb the desert or in these diamond mines, pulling out diamonds, and they're blood diamonds. And it still hasn't been rectified. He was also the governor of the National Bank of Egypt. So again, you got men that are born in different countries that are heading the banks of different countries. Amschel was the last son was the head of London, England. The 5 sons. So it's interesting. Well, how was he able to do that? How was he able to get his sons to be in control of all these banks in different foreign countries? Well, there is the legend that Rothschilds was clever enough to fool stockbrokers during the War of 1812. War of 1812 was between French Napoleon and the UK, the British, and Amschel, being who he is, a shark, a conniving shark, came up with a conceived idea of let me go ahead and get these stocks from these people, and they don't even realize it. So he came in there and saying, "Hey, the Napoleon's winning the war. We're getting our asses kicked. Napoleon's winning the war. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sell my stocks because if Napoleon wins, my stocks are going to be worth nothing. So I'm going to sell them now." So everyone believing what he said, all the other stockbrokers did this very same thing. They followed suit and they sold their stocks, not knowing that once they were all sold, Rothschilds went behind their backs and then bought all the stocks back, come back then and say, hey, you know what? Actually, the French aren't losing the war. I'm the winning the war. We're winning the war. The French are losing. That was the reality. Now, mind you, they didn't have TV to watch the 11 o'clock news. They didn't have CNN. They didn't have the internet. So they didn't know what was going on. The way they got information was word through maybe a pigeon or some sort of message bird, or but basically they had to rely on people that would tell them the information, proven or not. So imagine that now when he tells you that, oh, we're winning the war, we're not losing. Well, of course you want to get your stocks back. So you go to try and buy your stocks and only realize I got to buy the stocks not from who I sold them to, but I got to buy them from you. And of course, yesterday's prices are yesterday's price. So that was how the dynasty of the Rothschilds banking family started, simply by that one gimmick of lying about the war, getting everybody to sell their stocks, buy it up, and then have people buy it back from them at a higher price. That's how they became the leading banking family of the world. And it's still in this position today. All right. The caucasity of white folks, right? So we find that Rockefeller, good old Rockefeller, because you always hear me talking about him too, a fan of global white dependency, a pioneer of global white dependency, also follow suit. Now, there's a difference here of born men and made men. If you know anything about mafias and they talk about born men or people that are in the family bloodline, etc., then they have made men who are tapped by born men, etc. A made man is never going to be a born man, just a level lower, a rank lower. Rockefeller wanted to be a born man. He wanted to be born into this family of the Rothschilds and Cecil Rhodes secret society. If you know about your societies that held secrets, plug I wrote about that in the book. Who was the Boule? History of Black America of Black America's first Black fraternity. You can cop that at Ghetto Times, or you can go onto my site check it out. But bottom line is, so we have Rockefeller, who wants to be a born man and willing to do whatever he can to do so. And although he was never brought in, he did probably more than what Rothschild's done, and he's more modern. But he also followed suit and did similar what Rothschild did in regards to keeping things in the family, having his sons inherit this wealth, and doing so in a state where it was been handed down over the generations. So he, along with J.P. Morgan, they created J.P. Morgan Chase Bank. That was from Rockefeller having so much money that he started lending money out to people, and then turned it into a bank, because that's what a bank does. They lend out other people's money. His grandson, David Rockefeller, is one of the heirs of the deeds that John D. did. David Rockefeller was the grandson of John D. and Laura Spelman. And if you've heard my stories before, or my episodes before, you know that Laura Spelman was John D. Rockefeller's wife. Spelman is also the university that he created and named after his wife. So Spelman is not an HBCU at all, as all of the other ones are. The only really HBCU out there is Tuskegee. But Spelman is allegedly this place where for Black women go to, but not to realize, not most of them don't even realize that it was named after the diabolical Rockefeller family clan's wife, Laura Spelman, right? But David's parents were John D. and Abigail Green Aldrich. Abigail's father was the creator of the Aldrich Plan, Nelson Aldrich. The Aldrich Plan, which is what then later turned into be the Federal Reserve System. If you know about, again, you got to look at the episode I talked about the creation of two Americas, how it created the tax system, the Federal Reserve Note, and the Federal Reserve Bank. These are ideas that came from the mind of Nelson Aldrich. This is his daughter marrying into the Rockefeller. So again, they intermarried. They kept their money together, and they created their plans together as well. David got his schooling at Harvard and also University of Chicago. University of Chicago, again, if you know about Rockefeller, he created University of Chicago. That was his university. So, of course, his son's going to go there. And, of course, he's going to ace out and get all these accolades. His uncle was Winthrop Aldrich, due to his mother marrying, his father marrying an Aldrich, and brought him to Chase Bank. And he became chair from 1969 to 81. Then he was chair of the Council on Foreign Relations. If you don't know anything about the Council on Foreign Relations, you need to look up the book A Tragedy in Hope by Carol Quigley. And it talks about how presidents are chosen. Your vote does not count, y'all. It don't count. And if you think your vote counts, you should be insulted by the fact that every 25 years, the Voting Rights Act bill comes on to play, and they have to decide again if they're going to let black people vote in America. The next vote comes up, I think, in 2032. Look up the Voting Rights Act. That bill basically says every 25 years, the government decides whether they want to allow black people to vote. That's the only bill for any people of any ethnicity in this country has to get permission every 25 years on whether they're allowed to vote. All right? I'm just trying to tell y'all the history. And we're sitting over here being proud about, I made my vote. I did my part. It was already created. These politicians have already been created. And I'm sorry, I got to go on a rant for a second. How would you feel that you did your part when the choices you had you didn't really want? You don't want Biden or Trump, but because you voted, I did my part. I made sure Trump don't get in. That was my part, But what has Biden done? Biden has called us the N word. He's done all these. Biden has been in politics for a long time. Look at his track record. What has he done for us? But we are conditioned to think, well, I did my vote. That's what I'm supposed to do, my civic duty, and don't even realize that your vote is never even counted. If you look up the history of each president, you got to look at how did they become president? Where did they go to school? Most of them went to the same grade schools and middle schools. They're groomed. Okay, this isn't something that they come out of nowhere and our vote put them in, including Obama. All right, so let me get back to this. I get on my little rants. But in 1970, in 1955, Chase Bank was officially started. It was financed by the oil industry. The oil industry was owned by who? John D. Rockefeller. So he took his business from oil, and then he created an offspring of that and created a banking system. And in 1979, there was a study called The Significance of Bank Control Over Large Corporations, and it showed with large U.S.-based financial institutions had the most control over other corporations. The Rockefeller-controlled Chase Bank tops the list, controlling 16 corporations. They buy people off, right, to do their deeds. And the fact is we don't have access to their ledgers. We don't know where they're investing these monies in. When you put your money in the bank, we talk about the fractional lending system. When I talked about finances in, I think, the second or third episode, what they do with your money when you put in $1,000, for every dollar that's put into the bank, deposited, the bank gets to turn it into 10,000 or 10x it rather. And so that's what's called a fractional lending system. They take that money and then they give it back to you in the form of a loan or anyone else, and then you get hit with loan interest over it. The bottom line is that they make money off of your deposits, but they never give you a percentage back. And if the percentage they give you, you got to have at least 15,000 in there. They might give you maybe 1.8%. Meanwhile, they made 10 times off of the investment you put in. You put in $1,000, it turns into 10,000. They take that 9,000 because they got to keep the 1,000 that you put in there, and they give loans to other people. Those loans are fixed to that over periods of time with interest, and we get nothing from that. They get everything, right? So this is the system, the banking system, that we think is normal because we don't know that this is wrong. We have never been taught to do anything different, right? So that's the problem, is because we're not educated about how the educational system works. But let's go back to the history. Let's look at this, y'all. The history of America's first black bank. We had a black bank. I don't know if y'all know about this. It was short-lived, but we all know good old Abe Lincoln loved us so much that he wanted to free us, right? Quote unquote. Even though several quotes of him out there saying he believes if we got to live together, we got to live together. But I'm going to always say white people are better than black people. In so many words, that's what he said. We also know that when he created the Emancipation Proclamation and he freed the so-called Negroes from slavery, he only freed the ones south of the Mason-Dixie line, the ones in the south. He didn't free the ones that are in the north, and there was slavery in the north, y'all. So he only freed the ones in the south because he knew that they were losing the war, and they needed to win the war. The Union needed to save the Union. So what did he do? He freed all the slaves below the Mason-Dixie line. What did those slaves do? They jumped the Mason-Dixie line, came over to the north, and fought on behalf of the north. That eventually kicked the South's ass, right? So that's how the Union was saved. He didn't do it because he wanted to free us. He did it because the North was losing. But again, you'll never hear that in school. All you hear is about it. They care about it so much that he wanted to free us, right? So what else did happen with that? Well, he was assassinated, right? John Wilkes Booth took him out. And before all of that, Abe was talking about giving us 40 acres and a mule after emancipation. Well, after he was murdered, when Andrew Johnson took over, the first thing that he did was he nixed that bill. We ain't giving you no land and no mule. What we will give you, though, is we'll give you a bank. So they gave us a bank. This bank was called Freedmen's, like Freedmen Savings Bank. It started in 1865, the same year we were emancipated. and in New York City, right? So wherever you lived in the country, if you want to put money in the bank, this is the only bank you can put it in, right? And eventually it moved down to DC. So it stayed open for almost a decade. And over that time, this being the only place where Black people could send their money to put in the bank, it amassed an amount of $75 million over those 9 years. That in today's dollars is $1.5 billion. Okay. So what we're seeing is that when we look at the practices of Freedmen's Bank, this is where it gets real whack. This is a Black bank that is financed by Black dollars. So when you walk in there, you would think as a Black person, I can get a loan. One, because I put money in here. Two, because it's Freedmen's Bank. It's a bank for Black people, right? Well, their banking practices, they discriminated against the very Black people that the bank was made for. So the bank was for Black people, but a Black person couldn't go in there and get a loan. But if you're white, you could. So a period of over these 9 years, the money that we're amassing, that we're putting in because we're told it's the only bank we can get, but I can't get a loan there. And they're making money off of my money because they're loaning it out to other people that are paying it back with loans and interest. And we're not getting even a 0%, half of a 1% of what we put in, or 0.1 rather. And so they did all these loans to these white folks because they were trying to develop the rest of the Western America. A lot of those deals fell through. The bank went bankrupt, and the U.S. government held no one accountable. So all that money that those people put in, that our ancestors put in that bank over that time, was lost. No refund. So that's how they treated us with the first bank, right? We find also that the money that they gave to white folk allowed them to have a leg up in life, intergenerationally. If you were to look at life in regards to progress as a 26.2 mile marathon, we find that white folks are at mile 20 before we got to even start to put our shoes on and be at the line to start. They have a 20-mile head start. And we wonder why we're not in the space we're in. We think they want to say that we're too lazy or we're not educated enough. No, they rigged it. They set the system up. We look at what Roosevelt did with the New Deal. No, he came with the New Deal in the 1930s because he saw what happened with Freedmen's Bank, and he said, well, you know what? Let's create a space where we'll have all these small little credit unions around where Black people live primarily, and get them to put their monies in these spaces and then discriminate against them or give them very low or get very high rated interest rates, but also give them very low loan amounts, right? This also allowed them to get in cahoots with the housing authority to now start redlining neighborhoods and saying, well, you know what? This place is valuable because white folks live there, but this place is inadequate, insufficient, low value because Black people live there. So therefore, it allowed white folks to create this wealth overnight, and we were stunted in our growth. So this is really deep about how things were set up. And with that said, it really is important to know that this is why we are in the situations we're in. In 1863, when we were emancipated, we had 0.5% of the total wealth of the United States. And you would think that makes sense because they wouldn't even allow us to own the ground that we stood on. But in 2024, we've only amassed 0.5% since 1863. Is absurd, y'all. That's crazy. We've only amassed 0.5% since emancipation. Why is that? And why is it systemically in that space? Well, also because today we're denied mortgages at rates double the whites. Banks loan out money we deposit to others. Same practices as Freedmen's Bank. More of us, Pawatas, people of African descent in the United States, are unbanked and underbanked than whites. Nearly 60% of us either don't have a bank account or we're underbanked. And we pay higher interest on mortgages and loans, more fees and basic services, pay more for credit and financial services, and fall under harder circumstances under financial crises. So we getting hit left and right, jabs, uppercuts, haymakers. We don't even have a chance in this fight because we don't even know what we're fighting. We're thinking that we're equal. We're thinking that we should be treated equal. But unfortunately, we're not. This is the reality. This is what banks don't want you to know. All right. If you like what you've heard so far, I hope that you are. I'm happy that you're still tuned in and listening. And if you feel like it, if you haven't already, please go ahead and click that like button. It helps me grow the algorithm, helps me grow this channel, reach more people like-minded. That is my goal. That is what this Ways to Freedom is about. It's a space for us to talk about the things that people don't want to talk about and talk about it from a real perspective, particularly for people of African descent in the United States. So yeah, just want to put that plug in there. Let me play this clip for y'all. This clip is going to support what I just spoke about in regards to the discrimination of land towards us. Check this out.
New York City, 17,000 homes in one place. What bank would be crazy enough to lend a developer the money to build 17,000 homes or 15,000 homes in one place for which he had no buyers? We were in a suburban country at that time. People thought the whole idea was lunacy. Who's going to want to live in a single-family home when they can live in the city instead? Any of these developers, the only way they could get the capital to build these giant subdivisions was by going to the Federal Housing Administration, submitting their plans for the development for approval of the construction materials they were going to use, the architectural design, the layout of the streets in the subdivision, and an explicit commitment not to sell a home to an African American, required by the Federal Housing Administration.
What? Did you hear what he just said? Did you just hear what he said? Discrimination against us to sell any land. It was in the clause when they bought that house. You can't sell nor rent to black people. All right. This is not last year, y'all. I mean, 100 years ago. Some of this stuff is still going on today.
The Federal Housing Administration even required, as a condition of these guarantees, developers like Levitt to place a clause in the deed of every home prohibiting resale to African Americans or rental to African Americans. These deeds still exist in these homes today. They're no longer enforced, no longer enforceable, but they're still there. What was the consequence of this? Well, those homes in those days, in all of these suburbs, they sold for $10,000 or less, $8,000, $9,000 a piece. In today's money, that's less than $100,000, probably $90,000. African Americans who were prohibited, not they didn't want to, not because they didn't like living among whites, they were prohibited from moving into these suburbs, and they could easily afford to do so. Any working class family can afford to buy a home for $90,000, roughly twice national median income. Those homes and developments like that now sell for $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 and more. The white families over the next couple of generations gained, you can do the arithmetic, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in equity. They used that equity to send their children to college, to take care of medical emergencies, to take care of economic downturns, most importantly, to bequeath it to their children, who then had down payments for their own homes. African Americans who accumulated none of that wealth as a result of this federal subsidy had none of those abilities. Today, nationwide, African American incomes are on average about 60% of white incomes. African American wealth today is 10% of white wealth. That enormous disparity between a 60% income ratio and a 10% wealth ratio is entirely attributable to unconstitutional federal housing policy practiced in the mid-20th century that has never been remedied. It's a constitutional violation, and of course it determines the ongoing racial inequalities we have today.
This is a great book. You might want to read it. Looking for other books to read about the way laws have been set up. It's a great read. Definitely covers a lot of information in regards to the banking and housing practices and government practices of this country, this so-called nation that we love and live in, historically continues to discriminate against us. And because we don't read, because we don't study, and even worse, we don't communicate, we don't conversate about these things, they get away with it. And the next generation will do the very same thing because we didn't teach them any different. This is the stuff that bankings don't want. They don't want you to know about this stuff, y'all. But it's there. It's right there. If you did the research, and I'll even go even further, I did the research for you. So it's there for you. So you can go ahead and digest the information and then process it for yourself. Go on and you know, and what's the word I want to say? Do the research and validate it for yourself. So you're just not regurgitating, oh, and brother Boybe said blah, blah, blah. No, go ahead and look at these sources yourself so that you can validate it for yourself. Do your own research before you start telling other people. But it's there. It's there, y'all. And because we don't have these conversations, they continue to get away with it. When are we going to really start thinking about it's time for us to get a victory in this lifetime? Not, oh, I hope things are better for my children. I want shit better for me. Sorry. It's time for us to be a little bit more selfish because you're being selfless if you pass the buck on to someone else, especially if you give them no tools to enable them to even get a victory. All right. So this is the biggest part that the onus is on us to start the trend. You want to see it become viral? It starts with you. All right. So let's get back to what we're talking about here. So yeah, interestingly enough, good old Franklin Roosevelt, right? They talk about him as being one of the greatest presidents. Well, come to find out that he was the founder of the Housing and Urban Development, which later turned into the Federal Housing Administration. And he created that in part of the National Housing Act in 1934. Mind you, that was shortly after the banking crisis of the Depression. I'm sorry, the Depression, era of the Depression, because during the Depression, people really didn't have much faith in the U.S. government at all. Like, what the hell are y'all doing? You know what I mean? So they had to do some things to finagle and make people feel like put more faith into the country. And they used the FHA as one of those things. People, again, as he mentioned, as Rothstein mentioned, is that it enabled white folks to create wealth overnight, not only for themselves but for their offspring immediately. Whereas we were stunted, we weren't included in that reindeer game. Mentioned in FHA and banks had an explicit rule: do not sell to POATAs. Clauses and deeds restricted also reselling nor renting to us, and these deeds are still in existence today. Although they say they're not enforceable, the fact that they're still in writing is deplorable. Right? The homes appreciated $200 to $500 million in equity to pay for kids' college, medical emergencies, and passed down to children. This enabled children to have down payments for their own homes. And this plays into why we have less than 10% of their wealth. Create this huge disparity. It isn't about jobs, y'all. It isn't just about jobs. And in fact, jobs are a very small part of it. Salaries are, in regards to salaries. It's this FHA shit that put them in a huge advantage. Again, put them at the 20-mile mark of a 26.2-mile race. So as a result, we see that the housing crisis that happened in 2007 to 2010, we saw that half the collective wealth of our families were lost. During that period of that housing recession, Black families' wealth went down 31%. Our home equity went down 28%, and our retirement savings went down 35%. Whereas whites, our counter, went down only 11%. Their wealth, their home equity went down 24%. But guess what? Their retirement savings up 9%. During a recession, how does something go up? Because they were doing something different. They had access to information and principles and policies that we were not privy to. Here's another example of how modern, how they put a cap on things. You thinking your money in a bank is the safest place to be? Well, check what Soldier Boy got to say about that. Let me make sure I'm playing the right one.
Not asked.
Whoops. Sorry, y'all. I knew it. Here we go.
I asked for 100,000. How y'all only got 30,000 in the bank? Where my money at?
Soldier Boy, that's called fractional reserve lending. As of March 2020, the banks are no longer required to keep any of your money in reserve. They took your 100K and immediately went and lent it out. While they're getting 10 to 15% on your money, they're only giving you 0.05%, brother. The banking system's corrupt. You're better off taking that money and placing it in an uninterrupted compound interest account, otherwise known as a cash value life insurance policy. That money would be protected from market loss, likely outpace inflation, and grow tax-free for the rest of your life.
So I have a course in financial literacy. We talk about whole life insurance. We talk about, permanent life insurance versus term. I may actually do an episode about it because I definitely feel it's something that we are not, again, fully vetted on, the advantages of it, how you can implement infinite banking strategies to become your own bank and not have to use a Chase Manhattan Bank. And also, when you have those policies, you can actually pull out loans from that and not be taxed in this loan and from those. This is what Warren Buffett and them are doing, but this is what also Susie Orman and Jeff Ramsey are doing, but they won't tell you to do it. They'll tell you to get term life, but that's a whole nother conversation. I'm going to table that for another episode. But the point is there are wealth methodologies that are out there. We're just not, again, privy to that game. And we must understand we're living in a world where information is king. If you want to have a say in your sustainability or the trajectory of the wealth path of your family, if you're listening to what the majority of people are saying in the airways or on TV or on the internet, they're telling you to go left, you actually should be going right. If they're telling you to go right, you actually should be going left. They're put there to make sure the masses are doing the wrong thing so that those that are doing the right thing can benefit. Think about this. I'm going to touch on this for a second. Think about back in 2016 when Trump was talking about running for president, and there was a debate with him and Hillary, and they were talking about, hey, you don't pay taxes. And what did he say? It's because I'm smart. We know he ain't smart. His dad put it together for him. But the bottom line is he was smart in regards to he knows about the tax codes. And he knows the loopholes. And he said, if you don't like what I'm doing, then change the laws. Did anybody pick up on that? Maybe those that know did, but did those lawmakers do anything to change that? Absolutely not. Why? Because they also benefited from it too. They were just like, shut up, Trump. You give away information and ain't supposed to know. But it's still there. The information is there. If you know the information, you can act on it, regardless of your color or persuasion. It doesn't matter if you know the information, right? So that's what this is all about. It's about an information war. Here's another example of someone being discriminated against, person of color, simply because that and that alone. Let me play that. Here we go. Blah, 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 blah.
Mitchell Stewart says she had just finished her residency, and on December 18th, she went to Chase's First Colony Bank here to open an account and deposit a $16,000 signing bonus check from her new job at Valley Oaks Medical Group. Well, according to the lawsuit, staff members here at the bank asked peculiar questions about the validity of Dr. Mitchell Stewart's check and her employment as a doctor. The suit also states, quote, as soon as Dr. Mitchell Stewart showed employees at First Colony branch her check, they immediately treated her like a criminal.
Really unfortunate situation. They took my special moment away. You know, I felt like a criminal. I've never done anything wrong. You know, as in order to get a Texas medical license or a medical license at all, you have to have a clean record. You have to go to school for so many years, and they just didn't care. They didn't respect that. They didn't respect my credentials. They didn't respect anything. And I shouldn't have even been asked so many questions about my age, about what I did for a living to open a bank account with Chase.
All right, so let's think about this, y'all. Like I said, remember I told you about the fractional lending system? If you put in $100, it turns into a 10x, turns into $10,000 or $1,000. She put in 16 grand, which made it $160,000 for the bank. Now, I don't know why they beefing, because banks need money, because that's how they make money, off of your money, right? So they were turning down they were questioning a person who could have walked out the door and took their $160,000 with her, right? So they went an extra mile. I mean, they really was just hating on her for being Black and having money, you know. But again, if you know about whole life insurance policies, and if you don't, I'll be happy to teach you about it in my course, or I got an actual hack manual that talks about whole life insurance, is that you can use these funds. She put that $16,000 into a permanent life insurance policy. She can get that and make up to anywhere between 4.25% to 11% on that 16% or $16,000, just letting it sit there. What is the bank going to give you with $16,000? Maybe 2%, maybe. Right? Depends on the bank and service fees you're going to get every month, right? So again, these are things that we're not privy to, because this is the world that we live in. It's about the ones that know. And the ones that know don't want you to know. So they're going to do whatever they can to make sure that you are not aware, that you're on the outside of the inside of the box and not on the outside, right? So this is the practices that are happening today. We're seeing this. This is a study that was done about bank practicing where there was a person of Caucasian descent and also a person of African descent in the United States that went into the same bank, applied for the same loan with the same credit score. The person that was white walked out with the loan with an interest rate of 3.75. They also had the same credit score, I think I mentioned. Their interest on the loan they took out was 3.75%. The person of African descent went in there, same credit score, same amount of the loan, walked out with a 4.25% interest rate. Now you're thinking, oh, that's not that much. It's just 0.5%. Well, if you do the math, that's a $30,000 difference. So because this person is of African descent, they are paying $30,000 more for that and nothing more from the same banking institution. That is banking while black personified. All right. I want to play this clip because there are some white folks that are talking about the practices of banking and they know that this is BS and they want to do something about it. And they're calling them out. Now, unfortunately, this guy, Godfrey Bloom, is not in America. He's in the UK. But check this clip out.
I rise again, I'm afraid, to make the same old hoary speech that I've been making here for several years. And that is, it is my opinion that you do not really understand the concept of banking. All the banks are broke. Bank Santander, Deutsche Bank, Royal Bank of Scotland, they're all broke. And why are they broke? It isn't an act of God. It isn't some sort of tsunami. They're broke because we have a system called fractional reserve banking, which means that banks can lend money that they don't actually have. It's a criminal scandal and it's been going on for too long. To add to that problem, you have moral hazard, a very significant moral hazard from the political sphere. And most of the problem starts in politics and central banks, which are part of the same political system. We have counterfeiting, sometimes called quantitative easing, but counterfeiting by any other name. The artificial printing of money, which if any ordinary person did, they'd go to prison for a very long time. And yet governments and central banks do it all the time. Central banks repress the amount of interest that rates are, so we don't have the real cost of money. And yet we blame the real retail banks for manipulating LIBOR. The sheer effrontery of this is quite astonishing. It's central banks that manipulate interest rates, Commissioner. And plus, underneath all this, we talk loosely, in a rather cavalier fashion, do we not, about deposit guarantees. So when banks go broke through their own incompetence and chicanery, the taxpayer picks up the tab. It's theft from the taxpayer. And until we start sending bankers, and I include central bankers and politicians, to prison for this outrage, it will continue.
I'll show you. So, that was passionate. He definitely was not playing. Is anything passed by that? I can't say. Again, that's one of them Trump saying, if you don't like it, change it, and they won't. Because again, this is how they make their money. This is how they look out for their bloodlines. This is what they've been doing. This is the way the system has been, and they are not trying to change that because then it enables empowerment of other people, which they do not want, namely us. Right. So we're seeing, again, the whole game is just. It's a big game, and as it being a game, we must understand what role are we going to play. Let's give it, and here's another clip I want to play with you that, play for you that, again, I thought it was the way it was done, it was cleverly done, it's done in a kiddish kind of way, but just think about it, listen to what this person is saying.
To deposit $1,000 into my savings, please? Why, of course, we'll keep this perfectly safe for you, and for trusting us, we'll pay you 0.03% in interest. Sweet, thanks. Hey, bank, I was wondering if I could borrow some money for school? Yeah, of course. How much do you need? Just $1,000. Oh. Well, we just so happen to have $1,000 right here. Here you go. But remember, you have to pay us 7% in interest for letting you borrow our money. Okay, that's fine. Thanks. Hey bank, here's your money back along with the extra $70 to cover the interest. Great, thank you. Hey bank, can I withdraw my money from my savings account, please? Ah, yes, of course. Here you are, perfectly safe, just like how you left it. Oh, and I completely forgot your interest for saving your money with us. Wait, hold on. You guys are only giving me 30 cents when you used my money to lend it to the other guy, and you guys.
Okay. So again, like, we got to look at this and understand banking's doing this, and how none of us know, all of us think this is okay, like, because we don't know that this is criminal. They've been doing it for so long, we don't know how to question these type of things because, one, we have not been educated. We don't know how money works. We trust in the banking system. I always talk about agitation propaganda. Agitated propaganda, basically short, agitprop for short, is a system that is put in place to basically program you to think a certain kind of way. Think about it. If you're late at night watching TV and you see a Burger King commercial, even if you're vegan, they make it look so good, you might be like, yo, damn, I want a hamburger. You know what I mean? Or, you see a car that you can't afford, or you just got a car a few years ago, but I want to get the new version of the Kia Sorento. Or I see, the top commercials they put on there is all consumerism. The top 3 or 4 commercials or 5 commercials is going to be something about banking, it's going to be about life insurance, it's going to be about cars, car insurance, and also fast food. Those 5 commercials you're going to always see throughout the day. Next time you're watching TV for a while, think about the 5 commercials those commercials that show it, and tell me how many of them are hitting those 5 things. This is also triggering people that watch this by the millions to go ahead and act on what they just seen. Either go get that burger, or go to the car dealership tomorrow, or get on the app and try to find a car that you like, because the one you got, although it runs fine, you want to get a new one. This is how they keep us in the mindset of spending money opposed to building money. Not only are they teaching us that, but we don't know how to use the same methodologies and ways that they use to create the wealth. That if you knew how, you could do it, and there's no discrimination in that. It's just a matter of, do you know or don't you know? That's all it comes down to. All right. So we need to get in that space. These are things that I want to bring to your attention, y'all, because if we know these things, then we can probably change the trajectory of our spending habits, and also the way we conceive money, because money is currency, right? Currency is energy. So how do we deal with this energy? Because a lot of us, we deal with the energy like it's a hot potato. As soon as I get paid, I got to give it right back. Why? Because I got to pay a bill. We don't know how to bring it and keep it, or let it grow. We don't know how to take that dollar bill as if it was a lemon seed and plant it into something to grow into something bigger, so that I won't have to wait on you to give me $1 next time. I have my own dollar growing for me. Is these simple practices that we could put in place if we simply did a little bit of diligence, if we took a little bit of that 42.8 million, 42.8 minutes a day out of those 6 hours to learn about finances, to put us in a space where we'd be much better off. The ownership is on us. Stop pointing the finger. Look at the 3-point back at you. All right. So check this out. Doing the research about how bankings are, I find that, wow, they're getting away with murder, y'all. So check this stat I found. Banks collected $11 billion from overdraft fees in 2019, right? $11 billion. This is pre-COVID. But after COVID, they collected $30 billion. They nearly 3 times that amount in 1 year in overdraft fees. Why? They created the panic. And when you thought the world was ending, everybody was buying toilet paper instead of water and food, right? Everybody was buying gym equipment because all the gyms were closed, right? People were buying stuff to entertain themselves because we were home for a while and we couldn't come out. So you were spending money you didn't have, or money that was going to come later, or whatever it was. But the point is that banks will take advantage of you in any kind of way. And they're in cahoots. They're not working isolated. There is a systemic type of ecosystem that's put in place where, and again, they have these things lined up. So it isn't happenstance or coincidental or just happened today. I'm 100% believer these things are planned. These things are planned. The next one's already planned. The next one after that is already planned, and they strategically put it in a state of, in a time where we become very vulnerable because we don't have control over the ground that we stand on. We're so impressionable about whatever TV or now even the internet says that we react opposed to planning, opposed to taking in and assessing, and even before all of that, actually anticipating it happening so that I know what not to do. I'm going to go left. They're saying go right. Yeah, I'm going to go left. We're not even in that mindset. So we become reactionary. And what does that do? That enables them to continue to make the wealth that they do. So let's look at the wealth of these banks, y'all. How much money do they really have? How much money are they gaining from us, right? The 100 largest banks, we see that JP Morgan is the largest. JP Morgan, who? Chase, Rockefeller, JP Morgan, John, James, Piedmont, Morgan, right? Partners, and they have the largest bank at $3.3 trillion currently, right? Bank of America, close second, 2.5. Then we have Citibank, Wells Fargo, roughly tied at 1.7, and it just trickles on down, right? There are over 6,000 banks in the United States, and you also wonder, well, then how are Black people performing? You know, like, are Black banks doing okay? Well, we only have one bank that's in the billions of dollars, and that was in August 2020 when the merge of City First and Broadway Federal emerged. All the other ones are less than $1 billion. Now, you talk about banks in the trillions, and we can't even break $1 billion. Most of them are still in the hundreds of millions. Even though that's a lot of money, it's nowhere near what your traditional banks, commercial banks are. So we look at the folks that are behind, these. Again, we're looking at John Rockefeller, and we're looking at Cornelius Vanderbilt. We're looking at Andrew Carnegie, and we're looking at J. Piedmont Morgan. They are also called the robber barons. This is a collective that decided to come together, and all of them were made men, not born men, but they took it to a higher level than the banking industry. And again, banking's finance everything from catastrophe to rebuilding. This is the history of banking. This is what they do. This is how they operate. They make money on both sides. So therefore, it's to their advantage to be in control of making these disasters, right? You would think, right? So I also looked into where do they put their monies when banks are trying to flip their dollar to make it more, right? And I found, interestingly enough, that permanent life insurance plays a huge part. When we look at the interest rate of banks, we see that the interest rates are, the payments, for instance, today, the largest banks in America are paying an average of 0.05% on savings accounts and lending your hard-earned money back to you at an interest rate of 5 to 24% higher. Now, mind you, again, let's think, y'all, we are rationally thinking people. We're adults. Think about this. You give the bank money, right, to hold. I get paid every 2 weeks, direct deposit. I put a little bit of money in my savings, but the bottom line is I put my money there so money stays there because I don't believe in putting money under my mattress, or I'm not going to put it in the Folgers jar or put it in the freezer, right? I'm going to leave it in your vault. But it's not there, especially today because everything is digital. But then if I want to take out a loan, you're going to hit me with a 5 to 25% more times higher than the savings you're going to give me if I keep it in my account. I mean, tell me that's not robbery. And why aren't people deciding enough is enough? I'm not going to do this. I'm giving you money to run your operation. And then if I want to pull out money or take out a loan from you, you're going to hit me over the head when I'm the one that's allowing you to stay in operation in the first place. You are dependent on my direct deposit. Direct deposit saved the banks because before banks had to wait for you to walk your check in. Now Banks are getting your money, access to your money the night before. That's why you're getting money in your account the day before. You get paid on Thursday, it's in there on a Wednesday night because the bank already has it. Now they can do business the next day. But this is the operation that we're seeing. And again, we're none the wiser because we don't know what banks are. Right? So it also says here, but more importantly, they take your savings and invest it for personal profit, y'all. Personal profit. The banks are taking these dollars and making personal profits for themselves. In the below image, you can see the total assets that banks have, totaling over billions of dollars at some of the most popular banks we all use. So what have I found where they put a lot of their monies in? They're putting their money in permanent life insurance. Not temporary life insurance. They're putting it in permanent life insurance. All right? So you can see here Bank of America in 2023, last year, this is data that came out in December 31st of this past year, of last year, 2023. Bank of America made $24 billion on whole life insurance policies. They took the money that you put in your vault, and when they were able to 10x that, as I mentioned, fractional lending system, you put in 1,000, it turns into 10,000. You put in $1, it turns into 100. Whatever that number is, multiply by 10. All they got to do is keep the amount that you put in the vault, and they keep the rest for themselves. So they use that rest to either do loans, like car loans, mortgage loans, personal loans, and they also take percentages of the remainder and they put it into whole life insurance policies that grow anywhere between the 4.25% to 11%, with also royalty and dividend payouts annually. So we're seeing that they're getting $24 billion last year, Bank of America. Wells Fargo, $18 billion. JP Morgan, $12 billion. Passive income is being made from doing nothing, taking money, and a year later it's amassed this. And this is annually, y'all. They're making $24 billion plus annually. Annually. And this ain't the first year they've done it. They've been doing this for as long as the bank has been open. So this is just the latest figure. So if they made 24 billion this year, last year they probably made 23 billion. Next year, this year, they're going to probably make 26 billion or maybe even close to 30 annually. Annually. Meanwhile, we're getting temporary life insurance, or we're getting insurance through the job. And once the job let us go, we're no longer insured. The company keeps the money that they put in there if they did a match. And we're wondering why we don't have any money to put away. We're wondering why we got to work past 63, because we are not having these wealth conversations like they are. That's why this episode is so important tonight, because I don't know if you've ever had this conversation with anybody else before. And if you haven't, you need to share this conversation with them. Share this episode. This is a conversation that we should be having. We have so many get-togethers, cookouts, birthday parties, New Year's Eve parties, Super Bowl parties. We always getting together, but we never talk about getting together. It's time we get past that, y'all. If we want to get out of the situation. So, what can you do about it? What can you do about it? This information I've given and shared with you, what can be done with it? It's totally up to you, but I hope that it moves you to want to do something more than just say, hey, that was an episode, put it in my favorites or whatever, save it, which I'm appreciative of, but come back and watch it again. Have what do they do, the universal screening or the family screening, friends and family screening, like for movies, like do one for this. All of y'all sit down at the same time and watch this together. If not in the same household, watch it online together and then have a conversation about it. All right, what do we want to do for this? Or let's hit Mbwebe up and let's see what we can do to help have him see if he can help us put together a family plan, which I can do. All right. Next thing is, here's some materials that can help you. I mentioned workbook hacks. I have some hack manuals. If you scan this barcode, one of them I have here, you can see is how to create wealth with life insurance. I'm not a life insurance broker. Before all of this, someone called me about life insurance. I'm like, I don't want to hear about life insurance. Well, after what I spoke about tonight, I'm hoping that you're interested in hearing about a little more. And you could be like maybe not a Wells Fargo making 24 or 12 billion dollars annually, but I like to make, a 4 or 5 figure annually from opening up a whole life insurance policy or multiple policies and using that as passive income to grow into my family. Or when I need money in a situation, I can pull out a loan to myself and I pay interest in it like you would if you pull out your 401k. All right. So this manual particularly is only $7. You hit the QR code, or you go to cryptowokemovement.com. You can download that and you can read it and put yourself on that plan. It's that simple. These are small, short reads, less than 20 pages. Check it out, save it for your family, and implement those strategies. Another one I have here is, if you mentioned before, you can read my book, Apocalypse and Intergenerational Wealth Planning for Black People. And it's available in paperback, ebook, audiobook. If you don't have time, put in an audiobook so you can listen to it while you're at the job or in the gym or whatever, and get these principles into your mind. And let's, purge the Western mindset of operating in between that border that we put on ourselves because we're products of this Western made education where they teach you to be taught opposed to thinking for yourself. It's all about training opposed to actually exercising your mind. We are fully capable of doing these things, and we have the capability and the opportunity and the information to take us there if we choose to. You know how powerful we really can be the moment you decide that I'm going to stop asking for permission? How powerful you can be to change the entire path of where your bloodline is going, starting with you. And in the moment of a year or whatever it takes, or however much you invest in it, as far as time and learning and implementing what you've learned, can put yourself in a position where you can live off your savings and investments and not have to worry about clocking in or worry about, if I take out a loan, how much interest I got to pay. These are simple things that we can implement in our life if we simply decided to self-determine and emancipate ourselves. It's as simple as that, y'all. So this is the episode for tonight. I hope that you found this information helpful. This is really one of my, again, favorite topics that I wanted to bring out to you all. I thought it was very vital for you to understand that we can definitely change some things if we simply did some diligence, learn the methodologies, get with people that want to also do it or can show you the way. Again, I I offer myself to help in that space. And then also each one reach one. Telling your immediate bloodline, your siblings, your parents, if they're still here, your cousins. Imagine families being in a position. What can you do as a collective? We've seen a couple things on social media where families have gotten together and bought land together. Well, you can do the same kind of project. You don't have to sit there and look in wonderment. Actually use it as motivation. If they did it, so can I. And why haven't I? That is the goal. If we want to have a say in where we're going in the next 20 years, with all that's happening, with, if you saw my last episode talking about AI, artificial intelligence, we have to understand this money game. Not to splurge, not to be, this is about being in position to own your time. When you own your time, then you can think about the ideology of becoming a futurologist, one that is in control of creating their own future. And as they say, if you want to own the future, create it. Create it. And you can't create anything if you don't get someone else's mindset. So, again, I hope you found tonight's episode enlightening. If you did, please help me in assisting more of us to the mindset, this tribe. Let's grow this tribe up. Start out by liking. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. Sharing this actual video, doing a group view if you want to, the replay, encouraging your friends, family, colleagues about the financial conversation. And if they are open, shoot them a link to this video. Hopefully I can win their favor and subscribing as well, and liking the video again to help me reach other folk. But this conversation, in the least, taking away all my personal aspirations from this, I hope that you use this video as a space to come back and implement. If you do anything, nothing else with me, that is totally fine. But please take this information as a, if not introduction, as an addition to your already mental arsenal, and creating that path to freedom that your family so much deserves. All right. So again, if you also found this episode enlightening and you would love to contribute a monetary donation, I welcome it. It could be in any dollar amount from $1, $5, $100, whatever it is you feel that you would love to donate. You can send it via Cash App to Bit Marley, $Bit Marley, or you can send it to via PayPal at PayPal. You can see right here at the bottom, paypal.me/DG Times. So hope to see you in the next episode. We're going to be actually getting into some gardening and understanding that piece and being in control of your own foods. We did an actual piece on what's in your food a couple episodes ago. You can check that one out and go ahead and revisit the archives, y'all. Like, check that out. And again, please, if you find it worthy, share it with your networks. I'm trying to touch as many topics as possible because of the path of ways of freedom. It involves a 360-degree view of everything. Everything is part of the same thing. Everything is it is actually I'm trying to find the word I was going to say, but it's actually vital to our survival that we implement all of these different pieces, these components. They're not separate at all. They're all part of the same wheel. And when we understand that, we will see the collective impact it can have once implemented. All right. So I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode. Stay strong, stay focused, stay diligent, implement that 5-hour rule. And always know that our ancestors said we got this. Bless up, y'all. All right, 1 second. Let me actually put in my little closing here. And my closing was wrong. And I know I'm still on, y'all. I know I'm still on. Y'all hearing this other part of me. But it's all gravy. All right. Bless up, y'all.
Let the dollar circulate.